One question that I'd like to talk about today is, does Buddhism teach to abandon desire? Does Buddhism teach to abandon all desire? This question is very important because many people think that Buddhism is about abandoning all desires. Now this is actually partly true, but not completely. The Buddha taught that there are certain desires which we should abandon, and that there are certain desires which we do not need to abandon. However, most of the time when we think about desire, these are things that we do need to abandon. But when we think about someone who has abandoned all desires, the misunderstanding might arise that Buddhism is about being apathic, is about not doing anything, is about just remaining still and meditating and not taking any responsibilities. Some people might criticize Buddhism for this. However, in fact, the Buddha taught certain aims, certain determinations in life that we can take upon us. There are actually several aims in Buddhism, as I have mentioned before. One thing that you could aim for in life, for example, is to be someone who is a good benefactor, who is someone who likes to be generous. And in that way you could say that Buddhism doesn't say that to desire to be generous, to help others. For example, you desire to have the possibility to be generous, to do good deeds. Buddhism doesn't teach that that is wrong. Obviously, Buddhism does not teach that it's wrong to desire someone else's happiness. And in fact, Buddhism doesn't even say that it's wrong to want happiness for yourself. Buddhism actually teaches that that is a good thing as long as we would like happiness in a wise way. Suppose that you are a person who would like to have a lot of possibilities to be generous and do good deeds. If you'd like to be a person who has a lot of money, for example, to be generous to the poor, or you'd like to have a lot of property so you can donate your property to a good cause, whatever that cause may be that is good for society. Those are all aims that are not wrong, and if you desire for these aims, then that is not wrong. Then how does Buddhism differentiate between those desires which are an obstacle on the spiritual and ethical path, and those desires which are not an obstacle on the spiritual and ethical path? Well, there are those desires which increase our greed, which increase our anger, which increase our delusion, our stress, our misunderstandings, our lack of understanding of life. And there are those desires which actually do not increase our greed, anger and delusion, but actually help to decrease. Suppose you have the desire that may everyone in the world be happy. May everyone in the world be free from suffering, including yourself, in the wise way. That is not a desire that is an obstacle at all. And that is therefore not a desire that Buddhism teaches to abandon. If you are a person that likes to be wealthy, to donate, to be generous for a good cause, for the poor or for a religious cause, that is not wrong. There are those lay people that choose to live a life of wealth in order to do good. There are those that are lay people that choose to live a life of frugality, of poverty, of a simple life. Both goals are okay in Buddhism. As a monk, however, you always choose the life of poverty, of a simple life. This is the nature of the life of a monk, because this is the easiest way to train yourself as a monk. However, as a lay person, you may choose either of these two paths, because in the time of the Buddha, Both paths were taught and practiced. That is the path of the great benefactor who uses his wealth to support good projects in society, to support the religion of Buddhism, and the person who leads a life of a simple life, focused on meditation and practicing himself. For example, Citta, who was an important practitioner in the time of the Buddha, he was an example of that. So both of these aims are taught, and you can see that each of these comes with their own aims and determinations. So if I become a monk, I will not aim for wealth anymore, but I will aim for inner wealth, and I will aim to help develop Buddhism. First of all, to develop good qualities of the mind in myself, and then teach other people. Any desire which helps to contribute to that is good, if it helps us to overcome greed, hatred and delusion. However, in practice, most people, when they think of a desire, they think of something which goes hand in hand with sensuality, it goes hand in hand with greed. So these desires, Buddhism actually does teach to abandon, because they are an obstacle on our path. They make our mind less still, less happy, and therefore it's better to become enchanted and abandon these desires.